Now let's begin to shape our sculpt and also take a look at some of the other sculpt brushes that are available. So let's come in here. This is kind of where we left off. This is 06 begin. And so we've got our base geometry set up with a multi-resolution modifier. So here at the base level, I want to make sure that I want to go in and actually select a brush that's going to allow me to move these points around, because we just want to do some modification of this base geometry before we even get into the next subdivision levels. So instead of using Sculpt Draw, let's use Grab. So Grab is going to be almost just like a soft selection and movement. And so I'm going to turn on symmetry, make sure it's on in the X, and then let me get kind of a bigger brush size. And so what we can do is just come in and modify this. Now you can see that I'm actually in the wrong axis here, so I'm working in the X and I want symmetry to be in the Y. There we go. So you can see I can come in and begin shaping this, and I'm basically just clicking, I'm using a pen, but I'm clicking and dragging these points around. So it's anything within this radius. So if I had kind of a larger brush size, I could move a larger section of this, versus if I have a smaller draw size, I can move, single points at a time. And so I'm going to come down, and on these arms, I'm going to come down and kind of just move these down a little bit. Shift will allow you to kind of smooth things out. But I want to kind of move this down, this base geometry. Again, it's being mirrored over to the other side. So on the back here, I'm going to pull this down. Going to pull these down towards the base there. And same thing here. Kind of pull this out. So it's a little bit of a different workflow than using like the Sculpt Draw. It's because we're not dragging a stroke across it. We're actually sort of selecting the points and moving them. So kind of come in here. Move this down so it's sort of sitting on the plane, kind of close to where the back feet are sitting. Kind of bring this down a little bit more. And I want to make sure to have enough thickness for this, and so I can go ahead and add a little bit more thickness to these legs. I want to give them a little bit more bulk. So whenever we're sculpting with a multi-res workflow like this, a lot of times it's a good idea as just a basic workflow to shape the model as much as you can at a particular level before you move on to the next level. So create your shape, and then when you get to the point where you just don't have enough polygons to be able to shape it anymore in the way that you want to, at that point you can go in and start to add subdivision levels. Okay. And we can always go back in and modify this base at any time, even after we go in and sculpt it. But I'm just going to spend a little bit of time and just shape this a little bit. This is going to be sort of the head shape up here, so we can start to shape this a little bit. But it's going to get to a point where there's really not much else we can do. We can kind of change the shape of these legs a little bit, kind of bulk those up a little. But at some point, is going to get to the point where, okay, it's time to go up to another subdivision level. So at that point, we can subdivide. And then here at this level, you can do the same sort of thing, but now we have more geometry to work with. So I can get kind of a larger draw size. I can start to kind of bring this head down a little bit, begin to add a little bit more shape to it. Again, just kind of referencing those images that we have, that we saw. Kind of bring this out and add a little bit of bulk in here. And just generally kind of add our shape. And again, we're just using the grab. Okay. Let's go ahead and subdivide, oops, a few more times. And then before we add any more detail, I just want to show you a few more brushes that we're not probably going to use that too much, but I wanted to show them to you. And so let's take a look at Nudge. So what Nudge is going to do is, let me pull this down a little bit, and let's get full strength. So nudge is just going to allow us to sort of push things around. So you can see it's sort of like you're not doing a continuous stroke. You're just sort of nudging that geometry across the surface. Okay, if we were to come in here, you can see it's almost like a smearing type of an effect. We also have thumb, which you can see it's really just for a specific area. So think of it as you're working with clay and you're kind of pressing your thumb up against it and kind of pushing it up. Okay, like that. So you can see, you get a good indication there of what that's actually going to do. You also have twist, which kind of does what you think it's going to do. If you have an area, you can kind of see the edges right in there. And so you can see as I turn, it's going to twist those edges around. So again, we're not going to use these particular brushes too much, but I did want to show you those. So we've got twist, we've got thumb, and nudge kind of right in here. Grab, though, is going to be really useful for us in this project because we can go in and modify the shapes. We can also, if we hit the G key, that'll take us to grab as well. And so let's go down a couple of levels, and I'm just going to continue to kind of add a little bit of shape to this. Just looking at our model there and our reference, looking at the pointed little nose that he's got. Okay, and he's got sort of a bigger bulbous kind of a belly. We can start to give him a little bit more bulk in the hands. And his little hands also, we can start to kind of pull out some little fingers for him. Just kind of give those a start. We're not going to have a bunch of or a ton of res to work with that, but we can sort of start it at least. Same thing on the back. Okay, so let's just get it to something close to that. We probably want to come down and we want to have our belly a little bit more rounded off. So come in and sort of smooth that out, pull that down a little bit. Maybe smooth that out. Just kind of holding down shift and tapping will give you, kind of break that apart a little bit. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is take a look at some of the other brushes that we have. We'll take a look at some of the clay brushes, as well as scrape and flatten and some of the polishing that we can do. So let's go ahead and do that next.